All right, guys, welcome back into another PGA DFS video. Got the Northern Trust. I got Hazi on or I guess it's not a podcast really this time. It's just a live stream, but got Hazi on to discuss the Northern Trust as well, kind of like we did last week. Going to be more of a PGA focus this week, but if you have some betting questions, get those in there. How are you feeling about this week, Hazi?
I like it, man. I think that it's a really good field. I think it's like obviously just this and like this first event. I think just based off 125 top 125 and the players, I think are the two strongest fields that PGA Tour has per year. But there's some decent numbers out there that you're like you just click it right away, and I think we're gonna touch on that fairly soon.
Yeah. What's your kind of approach to the end of the season? Does it differ at all from, I guess, beginning or mid or like late? Because for me, to be honest with you, it's like this is my last like go-to event, and then these last two are kind of just like you play a little bit for fun, but you're mostly doing it for like entertainment purposes. And then the beginning of the season, it's also typically players would have like a couple of months off. They're trying to figure out their games again. Kind of what's your strategy, with the late season
Uh,
approach?
I I wish I started it. I wish I did it properly in terms of like
Control.
yeah, like not just the same units per week or going as hard per week. And but yeah, I mean, like I was touching a little bit earlier, I think that and what you just said is true. Like there's this week that is like the last week regularly that I think we have until the wraparound season starts again. But this year, I guess we're fortunate
Yeah.
or unfortunate, I guess, to have a couple majors still coming up. But yeah, this is like the last event where you can get some decent numbers. I think that's the most important thing. Like because when the field goes down to 70, like
Yeah.
you're not going to be getting certain guys at 50 to 1, 60 to 1 that you regularly would. And it's the same thing like how Brooks talks about in majors, how you can just cut guys off the list. Like even this week, you can already get rid of
Oh yeah.
50 guys, and it's still like a 70, 60 man event where you're
Hmm.
getting at least the full 125 odds, which is nice.
Yeah, that's the beauty for betting purposes, but it's also kind of the shitty part for PGA DFS wise. Because if you just have, you're not going to be on the wrong player this week. It's more or less if that player that you're on, doesn't make the cut, he just has an off week. You're kind of dead in the water there, which is it just makes an interesting week in general. I do have another quick question before we start to get into everything, real quick. If there isn't an NFL season, or if it gets delayed, do you think that doing like a golf fantasy football season setup like football would be a good idea?
Explain that a little bit more.
So just it'd be like the same thing. 12-team league, you'd have a roster of maybe like seven starters. It'd be like the DFS format, but instead you'd draft a team and then it would go, like a normal schedule. You have a waiver wire on Tuesdays. You'd have obviously your lineups submitted on Thursdays. It'd go until Sunday. You could do trades and stuff. I think that'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, I think anything that would be a little bit different than usual, especially with what's going on, just to create some intrigue. Because I already know my buddy sent me like a text the other day about like should we get an NFL fantasy draft
Yeah.
going? It's like it's literally 24 days away. Something I think
Yeah.
the Bills it's like probably even less for everything else. Like it's literally, and I don't know if I was talking to you about this or one of my buddies, but I think the NFL just quickly has the best structure like
Hmm.
schedule. September to February football, then you got a month off, then you got pro days, combine that starts, free agency, then you're already in June, then another month, training camp starts, preseason, and then we're back at it. Like it's honestly, I think spread out the best.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I'm saying it's like that's why PGA, if they came out with something like that, they could kind of capitalize on that. But just something fun in general. We do have some questions coming in on FanDuel. Would you go with Sanjay M or Abraham Answer? I am definitely going with Abraham Answer. I think just across the board this week, he's a little bit too cheap. He's a safe play, a cut maker, great stat fit, had 11th finish here in 2018. It's really just tough to avoid Answer this week. I'm really just shocked at his price point across the industry this week. Do you have any thoughts there?
I thought you were gonna say for sure Sung Jim based off how he played last week, but like because it was like a non-exciting. What did he come
Ninth, I
like top
think.
10, 9 exactly? It was
Yeah.
like oh he came ninth. Like you didn't even really realize that he was playing that well, but like maybe he is starting to round into some form. And like I remember watching Answer at the Travelers. He hit in the right rough on one, and then like it was really nasty. It was like severely side sloped lie ball above his feet, and like kind of jammed his wrist.
Hmm.
And then he didn't really miss any time, but he hasn't really been the same player. I'm curious as to why you think Answer's the much better play.
Just, this is where our different styles come into play here. You're mostly looking at the upside, and I do think Sanjayam has a lot more upside. I'm looking at the safety. I think Abraham
Yeah,
Answer
he
has a
makes
lot
the
more
cut.
safety. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah,
pretty much where that goes. So I guess in simple, if it's a cash build, Answer. If it's a GPP build, chase the upside with him, but
yeah,
maybe just make two. I mean, it shouldn't go wrong there. I
for
like both
sure.
of them
Yeah,
quite
yeah,
a bit.
yeah.
I mean,
No, that makes sense.
Im's a great stat fit as well. So, I mean, they're both top 20 this week. Any love for Joel Damon? So, for me personally, I didn't end up on him in my player pool. Or did I? I don't know. He might be a lower exposure player. I'd have to double check that. I don't mind him this week. I just think there's a ton of other better plays. He's one of those guys where the stats haven't exactly been popping as much for him. He's just been kind of getting it done. Where typically those guys will eventually burn you, kind of like Brendan Todd last week for me. It's like eventually that's going to happen. What about?
Yeah, it just feels like Joel Dahman appears and then disappears for a really long time. And we saw about there was a tweet I saw about Joel Damon was like, if I can just play on the PGA Tour, never win, but never lose my card, like top 125 every year, like that's cool with me. And it's like for some guys, that's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like just survive till the next year. Like they were talking about Rob Oppenheim last week, how every year he's been playing like a tour level caliber player. He's either at the go to the PGA Tour qualifying school, which doesn't exist anymore, or the Korn Ferry Tour finals every single year.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like Joel Damon is content with making 1.5, 2 million every year, which I think a lot of people would be. So maybe in a cash build like you're talking about, Damon, but like in a GPP build, excuse me, like do you really trust him to go out and get it done, especially in this strength of field?
Yeah.
Can't. That's his problem. He can't putt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have a hard time just trusting him in general. He's at a fine price point. I just don't trust it too much. Got a question about Justin Thomas. I'll just answer this one quickly. Are worried about putting? I'm like, no, not really. I mean, Justin Thomas. He is a little bit more hit or miss than you'd like him to be, but obviously, if he's on his game, he's going to top 10 if he's on his game. It's pretty simple as that. He's a fine GPP play like every week. You should definitely always have some ownership to him. And then thoughts on Kevin Na as well. Kevin Na,
flyer.
Yeah, if you want to throw a flyer on him, you can. He's one of those guys that kind of randomly hits, it seems like. So I definitely do not like to chase kind of those random players like that. I definitely like to go with, the safer players.
Yeah, no. I just think that, like, for the longest time, he wasn't able to win. You know what I mean? And then it's like, now that he has proven that he's actually able to win a little bit, however much that actually is, it's like you're getting him at like 175 to 1. Like, is Kevin Na really 175 to 1? Where if I just look really quickly, just give me a second. Like, let's go look at guys like around Kevin Na. Like, are you telling me that Ryan Palmer, Grillo, Ryan Moore have just as good of a chance to win? Like, they have, like, at least Kevin Na, for the first little bit, obviously not, but as of late, like, he shows that he can actually seal the deal. So, like, that's worth, like, I don't know, that's worth like 10, $20 for me in terms of like an outright win and even a top 5 or top 10, just because he has shown us when he's on, he can contend.
Yeah. And this is where I like kind of mixing the two together, because I wouldn't play him in PGA DFS, but you're right, he would make for a logical bet. And I just pulled up his stats on the 9 to 5 page real quick. Sixth finish here in 2017. I'm using the Travelers Championship as somewhat of a comp course. He had a top 10 finish there as well. Not the best stat fit, kind of grades out someone that should make the cut, so I don't mind that. And then do you just want to get into the high end players, so kind of the ones you're favoring? Kind of, I guess, do like our normal format. Who are your top 3 pay up guys this week?
Yeah. Like you go back to the last time I was here, and I remember because I had bet Bryson at the Northern Trust. I don't remember where that was played that year, but I think I got him at like 80 to 1 or something like that. And then the next week he was 40 to 1. I was like, there's no way. Like I think we've talked about before, like, nah, people don't repeat like on the PGA Tour. And then he goes on and repeats at the same golf course I think it was a Deutsche Bank or whatever it was for the second playoff event. But obviously Bryson is a logical bet. I mean, but he's kind of steep at like 12 to 1. I honestly don't mind starting my card. I was a little late to it, but I think you can still find some 34s. Man, is there anyone better right now tee to green than Tony Finau?
It's a good question.
since the restart. Like, I honestly don't think so. And we talk about all the time, like, eventually things are going to start falling in. Like, he's honestly just hitting it too good. And maybe it's one of those weeks where he's just hitting everything to 10 feet and it doesn't really matter. And he's going to make putts. It's not like he has to make 20, 30 footers, but like he's and on a variety of different golf courses, the 3M, where it's just birdie fest, Memorial, where it was a little bit tougher. Like, he's still playing really well. So I honestly don't mind starting my three guys at Tony Finau. I got a sneaky suspicion just because I bet Jordan Spieth last week on Justin Rose. I don't know that Friday round, like it looked like he was starting to figure things out. He was hitting a lot of fairways, hitting a lot of shots close. The putting was usually when I bet against Justin Rose, he's making everything, and it was one of those things where he was missing a lot of putts. So I kind of like Justin Rose at 67-1, and then, buddy, how do you not bet Tiger Woods when you can grab a 50 number on him? Like, honestly, if you just think about it logically, like I was talking to my buddy about this at his house yesterday, it's like, okay,
No.
he's 30-1 to win the U.S. Open. You compare the two golf courses. First of all, it's New York in late September. You have no idea what the weather's going to be like. Much more tighter golf course. And you look at this week, it's going to be hot as hell. He has an early, late tee time. So those two things are going to be good for his back. And he's 1 year before. And based off of Colin Morikawa at the PGA Championship, Tiger Woods is the second best iron player on the PGA Tour at this moment, still. And he's going back to his old trusty Scotty. Like, there's a lot of things that point, like, this number is just too high for me to pass up on him. It's not like 26, 30-1, whatever, the U.S. Open. I can understand you wanting to pass on him. But, like, at this golf course, with the weather conditions and, like, I don't see how you can pass up on that number.
What about our boy Richie Rowensky? I mean,
your buddy Rich Orensky, I don't mind him either.
He's a top iron player. Come on.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't mind that either for a longer shot bet. Absolutely.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
So honestly, like, I think this week it's not like the Bryson or bust week, but like the dude has this great chance to top 5 in terms of like lineup construction. If you can pay up for him, he'd be the guy I go for this week. Now, we did get a question about Jon Rahm as well. I like him a ton too. Those are kind of my top 2 favorite payout players, mostly because I don't think Jon Rahm's going to be as high owned as he should compared to the rest of the players in that price point range, which is crazy for the top end guy. And then also, it kind of seems like Tiger isn't going to be as owned as he should be, to be honest with you. Normally, he's a little bit higher owned than he should be. Maybe the general public comes in and boosts his ownership up, but dude, I completely get that play. And yeah, he hasn't been playing the best, but he's still been making cuts, which is kind of what you like to see for, a guy who hasn't obviously been on the top of his game. So I like that. And then you talked about Tony Finau. You pretty much touched on all these guys where I don't feel comfortable playing them in DFS lineups, but they make perfect sense for bets. And that's kind of the week that we have this week. It's like there's some guys where you can chase the upside like you kind of want to do, put some bets on them outright. And then there's some really safe plays you can go with PGA DFS wise. But Tony Finau, I've ended up on him in a couple of my builds just because the price point range, that's kind of, what happens there. Actually, I think we might have answered someone's question here. We got Andrew's question. He said, love the content. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, we appreciate you, Andrew. But what do you guys think of Jon Rahm this week? Debating paying up for him or just going balanced with Reed and Finau? I mean, I think we kind of touched on it pretty well there. I think I'd rather go Reed and Finau for a balanced approach, but Rahm is not going to be a bad pay up.
You could always just go with Jim Herman as well. Go up a couple guys up top and then fire Jim Herman in your lineup. But and this, look, Tiger Woods, I think, realized maybe, and I think it was a little bit too with the weather, and his putting was atrocious, but I don't think that was the be all and end all at the PGA Championship. But I think he understands now that he kind of needs that Augusta approach where, like, okay, plays the Farmers, doesn't really do well, plays Riviera, then he starts to ramp it up a little bit where he's starting to play a lot, like, and he knows that he can't have an off week this week. He wants to get to the Tour Championship just so he can play the 4 events in 5 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever it is to get himself in the best possible shape moving forward. So I think that's going to be some motivation as well for him to get it done this week. But also, like, have you heard of anyone talk about Rory McIlroy this week?
I think I've been like the only one to mention him, to be honest.
Doesn't it feel like what has he done all restart? Like nothing.
Yeah, but
and it's
he's made the
McIlroy,
cut.
right?
He made the cut.
Exactly. It's like eventually he's gonna get it done. It's Rory McIlroy, for crying out loud. Like, oh, like you're trying to tell me that, okay, Bryson, course history, really good at this course, and I think he likes it, but like You telling me at the top of the card where you have John Rahm and Roy McIlroy, Justin Thomas? I think that like for a lineup construction for ownership purposes, I think that Roy McIlroy might be the lowest owned guy out of those three. Like to be honest with you, I honestly do.
He could be. And
And I think just as much upside as Thomas or Rahm.
so the thing with Rory too is that a lot of the courses since the restart have not been Rory courses as well. Now you expect him to play better because obviously he's playing like a stud earlier on in the season, and it's just Rory McIlroy. But like this is a course that should fit him a little bit better than some of those other ones. So definitely agree there. But yeah, for me on the top end, it's going to be Rahm, Bryce, and Roy. Those are my top three, and then it's kind of one of those weeks where I'm fine with any of those guys up there. You can kind of make a case for any of them, but that's going to be my top three, kind of just on that upper echelon. I do also like Xander as well, but we'll start to dip down a little bit lower on some of the guys that you think are just not locks, but pretty strong plays, either given their betting odds or just salary. But before that, I'll get into some quick comments and questions real quick. So DFS Chef going to be on their live stream, the DFS Tavern later tonight. He says he's loving the new live content. It's courtesy of Hazy right there coming in clutch, so give him a shout out. So any thoughts on Adam Scott? I think that'll be a player that we touch on here shortly, so just, touch on that in a little bit. Yeah. Wondering if your builds are going to be stars and scrubs or midfield. I have done both there, Steve. I've done stars and scrubs, trying to fit Bryce and trying to fit Rahm into my builds, but I don't like doing that. There are some values that I like to make the cut. I just don't think they hold as much upside as some of the previous weeks for the values, at least. And then, just real quick, Tiger, yeah, we think he's going to make the cut. Yeah. Then thoughts on Cameron Champ. We'll talk about him in a second as well, but I'll let you go with some of those like lower end guys that you like quite a bit. They don't have to be, deep dives, but...
You know what the one encouraging thing about Adam Scott was that I think he had let me just pull him up. I want to get exactly what place he finished in at the PGA because like we were talking about, a lot of guys, what like some guys were liking. Yeah, he came 22nd. So like guys were talking about Adam Scott. Like, do you think he can win? Like coming back from the PGA Championship, being his first tournament, this and that. And it's kind of encouraging to play a major championship for your first tournament back in 4 or 5 months, and 22nd. Like that's actually pretty impressive. And I'm pretty sure Adam Scott won the Deutsche Bank in 2000. I think he's won on this golf course in like 2003 or 4 or whatever. One of the earlier events was here. So like, and it seems like a course that does fit his game. The concern obviously with Adam Scott is always his putting. Like, I don't think that's changed since the beginning of his career. What were some of the about like the build? I honestly agree with you in terms of you could do it either way. Like you could literally just hammer Bryce and JT at the top, and this can go for betting as well. But like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna bet 3 guys this week at the top of the card, and I think they're the ones that make the most sense. Or you could go a more balanced approach where you bet 6 or 7 guys, and then the same thing for DFS. Like, start your build at 8,900 or whatever the case may be, or 9,300, and then just go down from there.
Yeah, I really like the way you phrased that there. That's a pretty good way of phrasing it, because if you are going to bet those top 3, you kind of just have to commit to some of those 3 and kind of just hope that they win, or you could kind of mix and match it below. But yeah, to sum up why I think stars and scrubs could be the way to go, it's that the values this week, they don't have as much upside, although they could make the cut. There's some guys down there that I think will make the cut. You're really just hoping that those studs really go off top 5 and win and whatnot, whether that's Bryson or Rahm or Rory. That's kind of what you're hoping for there, where if you do the balance build, if you get 6 players to the top 20, you're feeling pretty good about it. And a lot of those players that we're going to be on in the midsection have a great chance of winning as well. So that's kind of going to be the approach there. I'll touch on Cameron Champ here real quick, just to answer that question. So Cameron Champ is just going to be an interesting play. He's a guy that we know can go off pretty much any week. For him, it comes down to his putting as well. I'm looking at the stat sheet right now. He's like 119th there. Now, his stroke gain approach is pretty poor as well. Everything else is pretty elite that we're looking at. Top 25 stat fit. Doesn't have any course experience here, which does worry you, but he's a guy that really can go off and really any week, and it wouldn't be surprising to me if he goes off. Another guy for me that kind of falls into that range is Harold Varner. Top 20.
I was literally just about to say that.
Top 20 stat fit. He's made the cut at this course the last 2 times he's played it. And let's face it, he wasn't that good of a golfer then as he is now. He's a little bit more consistent as a golfer. He's another guy where if he gets it going with his putter, he could have a really, really strong week. And then the last player I want to touch on, it's a GPP play. I think I touched on this on the main video this week, but Doc Redman, top 20 stat fit, had a great week last week. Top 10 total driving, ball striking, and then 13th in stroke gained approach. I mean, you talk about hitting the golf ball well. You're talking about Doc Redman.
Yeah, that's him.
Yeah,
absolutely
exactly.
Incredible. Yeah, just and those are the guys that I've highlighted for my longer shots. I think personally I like Phil Mickelson just because like Phil's grown on me over the years. I didn't really like him at the beginning, but he played well here last time. He was here. I think he closed like a 63 or a 62 in the final round. And there's been some flashes of some decent Phil golf. Doc Redman 150-1 just for all the things you mentioned there. You're gonna have to. I think it's pretty forgiving off the tee. Not that he's a sprayer of the golf ball, but like you really got to attack this golf course with your iron play, which I think Harold Varner and Doc Redman do just as good as about anybody. And you mentioned they're top 20 guys. Werenski, another guy who really strikes his irons well, in 225-1. Again, he has won a golf tournament before, so as opposed to Harold Varner, which I'm not saying Harold Varner is a worse golfer, but at least we know Rich Werenski can close the deal, whatever tournament it was, because then Colin Morikawa's first victory was at the same Barracuda Championship.
Yeah.
So, And another guy that just continues to play well, Mark Hubbard. I don't think he's missed a cut since the restart, and he's 275-1. And I think if you get certain books, you can get a better number. But like, I don't know how he doesn't have back problems and spine problems with the way he putts with that 8-inch putter. But like, still, man, he's at the top of the leaderboard all the time.
Yeah.
A couple of double bogeys derailed him.
Dude, his clubs are all short for him. Maybe that's why he's more accurate sometimes. I don't know, but you're right. He's going to have some back problems here shortly. But yeah, the top 10s have been there for him. He's a guy that if he eventually converts one, it wouldn't be surprising. Now, I don't think that this is the tournament for him, but he's a fine long shot bet. Someone just asked a question about one of my favorite long shot bets. It's actually Cameron Davis, who has 2 top 10 finishes in his last 3 starts. I mean, this is a playoff tournament. Obviously, there's going to be a bunch of good players here. But this is kind of going back to Hazi's point earlier. There's about 70 solid plays, and there's about, what would be the math there, like 50 plays that you just don't do. There's a lot of solid plays. Cameron Davis is one of those as well. Longer shot bet. He does have some upside. I don't mind him. Someone asked about Lanto Griffin and Luke List. I'm off of those 2 this week. I don't know if they have winning upside. I'm worried about them making the cut. I don't even know if they have top 10 upside now. They're fine plays. Yeah. I get it, but
if you're going to go with anybody, I think it's Lanto Griffin, not only because I think he's a better golfer, but he's also on PGA Tour Live, so you actually get to watch every shot.
That's so right.
That would be my deciding factor.
The strokes gained PGA Tour Live. I was so happy with their future coverage this week just because they're mixing it up. I got so sick of watching Phil shank 5 drives each tournament, or like Ricky struggled to make the cut. It was like, guys, this is getting old. Come on, mix it up. Yeah. And I'm glad they did that.
Well, just because too, like there were such easy storylines. Like, why wouldn't a Bryson Brooks Reed grouping be unbelievable? So, like, you know what I mean? Like, but that should have been done 4 weeks ago. Shouldn't wait till now. You
could have even had it be Bryson Group A in the morning and Brooks Group B in the morning, but you still kind of had that future group coverage of them being kind of close by as well. So it would have been fun to watch. And then thoughts on Henrik Norlander. Will he continue to make the cut? I think he makes the cut, but I don't think he holds that much upside. It's just kind of a shoulder shrug play if you end up on his salary. I wouldn't really bet him unless it's a top 40 bet.
Yeah, and I think just a lot of people have been talking about him over the last few weeks, and I think that at his price point, he's going to be relatively high owned, where you can get some other guys, again, that probably won't be as high owned as him, that have just as much upside, if not more.
Yeah, I mean, he's not really a guy that's going to take advantage of a course either. He's just a guy that plays the course smart, and I don't think that's really going to benefit him this week. Yeah. All right, so just going to touch on some of my favorite values here, and then we'll wrap it up here in about 2 minutes, so make it quick here. Scott Stallings. I'll just touch on Scott Stallings one more time.
You love your buddy Scott Stallings.
I love made cuts, dude. It's just 8 in a row. Not the best outfit, but the thing I like about him is that he made the cut here in 2018. That's a good sign. And we're looking at stroke gain approach and birdie or better percentage pretty strong this week. He's about top 50 in both of those. So Scott Stallings at 6.4K on DraftKings, that's pretty solid. And if you want to bet him to top 40, that'd be the route I go with. And then just two others real quick. Make it quick. I want to wrap this up. Brendan Steele, top 25 stat fit. I don't mind him. 5 straight make cuts in a row. He is a guy that can show some upside occasionally.
Your buddy Brandon Steele, you mean?
Yeah. What did I say? Huh?
You said Ben Steele.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
Whatever. That's okay. Yeah, no, the Stallings one I like too. No, it's just funny because you wanted to wrap it up and then you couldn't even say the guy's name right. But, man, Scott Stallings from Massachusetts, and so is Richard Rensky. So maybe that's one of those omen things where it's like, hey, you know what? If I'm leaning towards a guy, it's like, yeah, 6.4K for guys who made 8 straight cuts, which, for a guy that's not newer, but like that's getting better at DFS as opposed to someone like you. It's like, hey, 8 straight cuts for a guy at 6.4K. That's like unheard of, I would think.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And it's like, yeah. And then it's like, hey, and he's from the Massachusetts area. Sign me up.
Yeah, exactly. If he was a little bit better stat fit, like top 40 or 50, I wouldn't be locking him in, but it'd be pretty darn close just for that reason. Any closing?
You can't bet your buddy Naismith this week.
Did he withdraw or just in general just because he's not a good play?
Oh, did he make the top 125 this year?
Yeah, I believe so. I have him on here, unless that was an accidental inclusion.
Then I'm surprised you didn't say anything about him because it seems like an auto bet for you.
I mean, he has made the last 2 cuts. He's a top 40 stat fit. I don't know. He just hasn't.
600 to 1. That's worth a couple bucks.
He is a good stat fit. If he didn't struggle the last 3 events, he'd be even better. So maybe
it's the perfect time. He's going to turn it around.
Top 20 bet, sure.
Top 2017 one. There you go.
There it is. All right. Any other closing thoughts?
No, man. I think we said it perfectly. Just in terms of this can either go one of 2 ways, where it's just you hammer the top of the card, and that's the same thing for your DraftKings lineups, or you just spread it all out a bit and you do the same thing. You get a lot of $8,000 guys on DraftKings. The week can go one or 2 ways, and I honestly don't know which way it can go because if Bryson decides to show up, I think he could run away with it. But if he doesn't, I think there's a lot of guys. You know what? We haven't touched on Brooks. You hear what he said? I don't know if it was after his Friday round. He was kind of being coy with the reporter, and I think the reporter was a little bit stunned. But he was saying like I was never thinking about withdrawing. Like if I had to come back tomorrow for one hole, I was going to. But he didn't say that his knee was bothering him. He was saying that I'm assuming it was his hip because he was saying he physically cannot get onto the left side on his follow through. Wow. So like 36 to 1. I don't know what Brooks is going to show up this week.
He withdrew actually, quoting his injury. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, but, well, then I'm an idiot.
No, that's fine. I mean, touched on it though. Brooks it's very interesting. Yeah. So I think part of the reason is that with his knee injury, he was obviously trying to not favor that knee as much, which then brings other injuries into play. So if he actually is injured with his hip, that's what caused it. But he's just a guy that needs a break. With the U.S. Open coming up, he definitely just needs to take off and figure out what's going on.
Hey, Brooks, if you're listening, golf is hard sometimes. Golf is hard.
It can be.
I know. I played today and I stunk.
Me too. I got 2 birdies though, so it kind of made up for it.
I wish. Maybe I had 1 birdie putt today. Maybe.
Oh, that is a rough round. That's not fun at all.
I think I 1 putted the first 4 greens and walked off 4 over par, which is always good. I mean, like, fucking joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. So never mind. Forget Brooks at Thursday. Maybe he is a good bet. Fly under the radar, and he doesn't even tee it up. An idiot I am.
Yeah. No, don't touch Brooks.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
it happened to me. I had Carlos Ortiz at the 3M, I think it was, in one of my fucking lineups, and I went 5 or 6 in that lineup. I'm like, fuck, are you kidding me? Well, I could have had a 6 lineup if I knew Ortiz. I withdrew.
So I do Yahoo, just like a lineup or 2 each week, and then last week I just kind of totally forgot about it. I made my first build, and the first build was absolutely baller. Had 5 out of 6 across the cut line. The only one that it didn't have make the cut was Abraham Answer. So ruined a real good week there.
Yeah.
That sucked. I was just too focused on DraftKings last week, but we'll wrap it up here. Got a couple questions here, and then we'll get out of here. So, would you consider Sam Burns a lock value? Heck no, not a lock value at all. There's plenty of solid, similar value plays down there. He's a fine value, has great upside, but there's safer and equally high upside plays down there. Naismith is min price on FanDuel. Don't don't play Naismith. Just don't.
But yeah, for betting purposes too, I think Burns is 225 to 1 and Doc Redman is 150 to 1. And you cannot tell me that Doc Redman's a 10-time better golfer than Sam Burns. And they're the same guy.
Yeah.
In terms of their putting being the weakest part of their game, but I would still take Doc Redman's putting over Sam Burns. Mm-hmm. So I think and it sucks though. It's like if Doc Redman would still be a top 20 stat pick this week if he went 80-80 last week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just sucks that he played so well last week that he's going to be probably literally 10% owned this week. Mm-hmm. But I mean, still, it's like that's still a guy that could be top 10, no problem.
I really thought he was going to be the one that snuck in and won, or Mark Hubbard. I didn't think Horschel was going to close it out. I thought one of those two were going to close it out last week, and I was kind of sad to see that they didn't. And then DFS Chef asked, how much is too much Harris English? What is the saying? The limit does not exist, or whatever.
Yeah, never enough.
Yeah.
Harris English and Matthew Naismith, two guys that you can never get enough of.
Definitely Harris English, but that'll wrap it up. We got a couple more playoffs here. We'll kind of figure out what we're going to do content-wise with that, but that's the end of the show. Thanks for watching.